going to look at a problem that a lot of people are having. As we get more detailed models drawn and further into the class, we're going to start having this problem more and more. What's happening is people are modeling things and getting too many polys in their model. And when you get too many polys in your model, what that does is the computer has to generate all of these shapes. And the more shapes you have, the longer it's going to take for it to generate the shape. If it takes too long, the computer eventually crashes, and you have all sorts of problems. Now, when you originally draw a box, the 1 by 1 by 1, that's no big deal. Computer can handle that. You can create an editable poly, which is basically you have this one shape, this one block. And as you increase the segments, you're going to increase the polys. In just about everything you do in 3D Max, you're going to create shapes using these polygons. And when you look at an object in 2D or when it's in wireframe, what you're seeing is you're seeing the polys. So we're going to move this block over real quick and then draw a teapot. And you can see in this teapot all of the polys that make up the teapot. That's all of the shapes that make up this teapot. So when we right click on this teapot and we convert that to an editable poly, what we're doing is we're saying we want to be able to manipulate all of the polys in here, and when we pull these vertices over, grab this vertex right here and pull it over, we're actually manipulating that poly, actually the two polys here that create that shape. And when we have this entire teapot, that is actually referred to as a polygonal mesh. It's a set of connected polygons. And when we build round objects out of these polygons, what we're doing is we tessellate a smooth surface. And really it's a theoretical smooth surface, because when we draw the sphere out, for instance, what we're doing is we're adding enough polygons in the sphere so that it appears to be smooth. And we can see this as we decrease our polys. If we'll watch our 3D over here, we'll decrease these polys, and as we decrease them, we can see the smoothness starting to go away. And when we get down low enough, eventually we don't have enough polys to give that theoretical smoothness of the sphere, so we start seeing the actual flat sides of these polys. So the issue we have is we want to create the best looking scene that we can, but we also need to be able to continue to model our scene. And if this were, say, going into a 3D video game, we need to make sure that we have enough polys to make the object appear to look good, but we don't want it to slow the game down. And we also want to leave ourselves enough polys that we can model everything else that's in the scene, whether it be trees or mountains or whatever you have going on in the scene. So for instance, this right here for a sphere wouldn't work. However, if we go over here and we take these segments and go too far up, we have way too many polys in here. We just don't need them. And as you can see, if you watch this 3D viewport right here, changing this a little bit doesn't actually affect the smoothness, at least of what we perceive as being smooth over here in 3D. So we want to use as little as possible without affecting the actual object itself. And this is the level of detail. So for instance, if this sphere was going to be really close to a character in the 3D game or in the scene, in the 3D scene, we would want it to have a higher level of detail. But if this sphere was going to be far away from the camera or from the line of sight of the viewer, then we could have even less polys without it affecting how the sphere actually looks. So another tool we have that we can use in 3D Max, we're going to bring this back into view. and we'll increase our polys a good bit for this, too much actually. So now if I copy this, I'm going to hit shift and drag it over, and I'm going to create several copies. Now you can see that there are a bunch of polys in here and a bunch of polys we don't need. So we're going to select all of these spheres. We're going to come up to our modifier list and come down to the Pro Optimizer, and we're going to hit calculate. And we can see that in this scene we actually have 14,896 points, and we have 29,760 faces. This would actually work. However, if we were to copy this and make 100 of these things, it would be more than the computer could handle in a timely fashion. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull this vertex percent down, and you can watch what happens to the polys in the two-dimensional viewport. So as you can see, when we pull it down all the way, we get these little triangle looking things. So that's too far. So we want to pull that back up to where we get the relative smoothness that we want. And right here you can see it's not changing it very much at all, so that's about where we want to stop. And we've gone from over 14,000 points to 3,752 points, and we've gone from over 29,000 faces to about 7,400 faces, which is pretty significant, especially if we had 100 of these things. The one downside to this is if we came back over here and converted this to an editable poly, it's going to convert it based on the polys that are here. Sometimes if you have other shapes, the sphere itself, this particular sphere, we've done it in a manner where it's not going to affect it greatly, but if you do this on some other shapes, it could make it to where it's hard to manipulate based on just the vertex, or if you go down too low, it's hard to manipulate it based on just the vertex and retain the rest of the shape other than what you're manipulating.